Hello, and welcome to Mornings with Joel, commercial real estate podcast, where we focus on rising stars and established players in commercial real estate and talk to them about how they are building legacies in today's marketplace. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you being here. And to another exciting episode of Mornings with Joel CRE podcast. So we appreciate that. So we have a special guest with us today, James Kynes. We appreciate him being here. And James, what's happening, man? How you doing?
I'm doing great, Joel. How you doing? Thanks for having me this morning.
Yeah,
glad
absolutely.
to be here.
Yep, absolutely. Good to have you here. Good to see you here. And you've been a regular supporter of the podcast, so we certainly welcome you back and thank you for being here as well. And it's good to have you on as a guest. So James, it's great to have you here today. We were talking a little bit about your background, and it's kind of interesting how you got to where you are and where you are today, and some of the things that you're doing. So just give us an introduction, introduce yourself, and then we'll build on that.
Awesome, bro. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. First, I want to say I appreciate the opportunity to come in and share with you all and share with your listening audience. Again, you were right. I do tune in to the show from time to time on Mondays. I'm always learning something new by the guests that you have on the show. I'm always enlightened by the opportunity to meet and see like the different faces that you have come through. So I'm appreciative of that. For the people who may not know me, I am James B. Kynes Jr., the broker for Rushmore Moore Commercial Real Estate, where we specialize in tenant representation and business brokerage. And I guess the podcast today is going to kind of help you understand how we got from the bottom to where we are. We still rising though. I won't say we at the top. We still rising, but I'm having fun though. It's been a great learning experience. I've been in real estate for probably like 12, 13 years now, but it's been coupled with some other experiences that have allowed me the opportunity to transition into the commercial space. And so I'm excited about kind of just shedding some insight and talking about some of the things that I've done mentally and, to prepare to make a transition and to ultimately make the transition. So I'm excited about it.
Okay. All right. Well, fantastic. That's really good. And just to kind of start off, you don't have to take us from cradle to grave, but I found out the other day that you've gone to school with some people that have been on this podcast previously, and you've also went to school with some other notable folks. So that's kind of interesting. Your background right here in Decatur, Georgia. You're homegrown.
Yeah, I am a Decatur guy. I was actually doing some site tours with a friend of mine who he's from Atlanta. He's from Decatur. He and I went to high school together. He came in town, visited a couple of weeks ago. We were looking for some sites for development. He works more on the development side of the industry and has done a lot of high-level transactions from the banking side of real estate, international as well as local, nationally here in the States. But he and I were riding and just kind of brought your name up, told him I was going to be on your podcast. He's like, man, I was on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. I'm thinking to myself, how did I miss the podcast you were on? So, but yeah, Terrence is a really good friend of mine. He and I graduated high school together, and we got some just phenomenal people in my high school class all together, and from my high school as well. So it's, a very community niche environment that we were able to grow up in. Really taught us a lot about, formulating the proper mindset to be successful in life and to how to attack issues and problems in life and how to grow from them. So we're very appreciative of that upbringing that we participated in and had a chance to involve ourselves with. So yeah, that's a good thing with Terrence. That was funny.
Yeah. Small world. You got to tell them, don't be coming to my backyard developing stuff without me knowing about it. So I'll make sure.
We're putting you in the loop now. We're putting you in the loop right now.
All right. Well, sounds good. So appreciate that. So let's go back a little bit, because one thing I know that I've had a lot of discussion with, and oftentimes a lot of the REAP students and other ones that are on this podcast have asked is, okay, I'm in the residential side of the business. I've been selling real estate as an agent, but I really want to get into commercial and kind of up my game, if you will. So talk us through that a little bit. How in the world does a person transition from doing residential real estate and kind of really get their feet wet in the commercial space? How would you recommend that, or how have you done it?
So that's a good question. I think it's there's obviously layers to it. To be honest with you, I will start with, I think you really have to understand, like, you have to do a self-evaluation per se. And what I mean by that is, like, you have to do a self-evaluation as far as understanding how you like to do business as you work in like the transaction world. So you have business to consumer as well as you have business to business. Now, an example for that for myself was when I was actually coming out of college. My first job, I sold Kirby vacuum cleaners door to door. I was in the neighborhoods. I'm probably knocked on some of you all doors, some of your parents' doors, and came and tried to do a demonstration with a $2,000 vacuum cleaner in the front door. But as I learned,
throwing dirt on people's floor, huh?
it was such an emotional drive. It was an emotional drive for a sale or that product. But you in people's homes, you're doing like a service, you're showing them like all the dirt in the house, you're driving that emotion, and then at the end of the day, they so emotionally riled up until you drop a price tag on them. They kind of like, I don't know if I want to do that. But the learning process of it was hard not, because you had to really like do a presentation that was fitting enough that they would want to, make that investment. And later on in my work career, I had an opportunity to my first corporate position, I sold office equipment, which was more business to business. So as I began like talking and dealing with more, C-level individuals, more decision makers that were, their decisions were not emotionally based. Prime example for that for myself is I had an account that I called on, and they were growing fast, and so they were buying equipment relatively fast. So they were interviewing. They had demos coming out for all the different office equipment companies. So my demo, I was working with Panasonic at the time, and the demo that I put in their office for a trial period, it was just acting up. It was not cooperating. Wasn't doing what it needed to do. So I was kind of nervous that I wasn't going to get the sale holistically because of that problem with the demo. But lo and behold, I ended up earning the business. I got the sale, and the first one they bought from, they cut a check for like $20,000. And so I was like, wow, like I was able to overcome all these objections just and get the sale done. And when I saw that $20,000 check, I was like, I was able to do that with a product that was acting up and wasn't performing properly. I know I can do that myself. Like, so that's kind of but it instilled like the aspect of how I like to do business. I like business to business. I like working with business owners. I like working with individuals that are in positions that their decisions aren't distinctly related to like an emotional drive, sort of like business to consumer. So I kind of like in residential real estate more like it's kind of like more business to consumer. You're dealing with homeowners, the future homeowners. In a lot of cases, it can be an emotional drive because they've developed like sentiment in the home, or, as you tour properties, for example. I tell, when I was showing residential properties, I used to tell clients all the time, look, don't fall in love with the house while we tour them. Because people go in the house and they go to claim it, they walk around the house 7 times, it's going to be theirs with the WAP, and all of a sudden it may not happen that way, especially in this market, it's the seller's market. But, so it was more of an emotional drive versus you dealing with more of an analytical, more of a business approach to a decision that someone would have to make. So once you can kind of put your mindset in the capacity of, do you like to nurture individuals from a consumer capacity, or do you like to nurture the idea of business from a business to business capacity? If you can evaluate and get to a conclusion about yourself and how you think and how you operate from that perspective, then that is the beginning step, in my opinion, as far as knowing that you are, can make a transition. I think it's possible for anybody. Again, it's just a matter of doing what you are passionate about and finding that drives your thought process in a way that allows you the opportunity to go in and do the work that you like to do with passion because it's something you enjoy doing. So I think that was one of the first things that I would suggest, is like to do a complete self-evaluation as to your thought process, your mindset on how you like to conduct business.
Okay, all right. So that's interesting. I was kind of wondering how you were going to get from Kirby vacuum cleaners to commercial real estate. So,
man, it's so much more in between that, Joe.
I'm sure. But you tied it together nicely. So one point that you brought out, which is I think is spot on, is it's all about the mindset. What does your mindset need to be starting out in order to make this happen? Because let's all face it, we all have those rough days where we're like, man, I don't know if I want to get out of bed and do this anymore, right? And if you
Right.
don't have that passion, you're going to lay right there and go broke, right? You're not going to want to get up and get back in the fight and make it happen. So
Mhm.
I completely agree with that. It's all about mindset. And then from there, if I was, let's say I was a licensed residential agent, and I'm not, but if I was to jump into commercial real estate, what do you think would be the easiest transition? Because I hear a lot of folks wanting to go into commercial leasing. Then I hear others that want to go into actually commercial sales. And some of them start off with small commercial real estate. So what are your thoughts on that? What area of entry do you think would be the easiest to transition to?
So I would say, and probably the next step would probably be like if it's a consideration of yours, something that you're entertaining to do. First, the next thing I would say once you evaluate your thought process on how you like to conduct business is you need to define your why. Like, why is it that you want to come over to commercial? Why do you want to do commercial? Let's say, the primary reason to make a transition? Is it financial? You've heard like it's big money in commercial? Is it, you got a overwhelming request from current clients that you're working with on the residential side that are also business owners who are leaning towards you because you are a subject matter expert to them? Are they kind of driving you into like transitioning into doing commercial? So first, I would say identify the why, because the opportunity is there, but if your why is not big enough, like the industry is so challenging, it's so big, it's so broad, like to refine it and restrict it to exactly what it is that a discipline that may resonate with you that you can actually excel in. Like if you don't have a clear why as to why you even doing it, like the rest of it is it's going to be jumbled up because it's not you'll have a difficult time figuring out where I need to streamline my efforts in order to put myself in position that I could, obtain some level of success, obtain some wins so that I can continue to grow and make things happen. So ask yourself, like, why do I want to do commercial? Are you tired of showing people houses? Like you tired of showing, you tired of opening up doors. You tired of dealing with the emotional roller coaster of potential clients from a residential perspective. And not all residential clients are bad and need emotional roller coasters and emotional wrecks. So don't get me wrong, but again, it's a different drive as far as the mentality is concerned. And so you have to approach it with that kind of aspect. Like you're going into it knowing that you're going to have to bring a level of analytical prowess to the situation because you're talking to business owners. And a lot of it is going to be involved in like numbers and a lot of, situations that you may have to help them sift through, opportunities that are presented to themselves. So, identifying and defining that why that transition is important to you, I think is probably the next step to get into that next phase, Joel.
Okay, all right. And that's a good point as well. We'll certainly accept that because what might be a easy transition for one person might not fit the why for another person, and they'll be miserable doing it as opposed to just jumping in because they thought it was easy. So, and you bring up a valid point as well because you can make a tremendous living selling residential real estate. We see that out there all the time, right? So
Right.
it's not a bad thing. And sometimes those checks on the commercial side can spread out as well, and not be as consistent. So you have to look at that as well as that kind of breaks down. So very good point from that standpoint. So at this point, what would you say is your expertise? Because I know you're teaching classes as well. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about that and what areas you have chosen to focus in on and specialize in.
So that goes to our next point, actually. You almost reading off my paper over here, Joel.
No
That's
problem.
good. So now that's awesome. So I'm a tenant. I define myself as a tenant rep broker and a business broker, and that is basically based off of me defining my past experiences, and that allowed me to transition into it. So again, I sold office equipment. The office equipment industry was very diversified in how I was an account executive. I didn't specialize in just selling office equipment to medical offices or to attorneys' offices, or we had some guys, they had like major college accounts and stuff like that. So I was very general across the board. So I was able to call on mom and pops. I was able to call on corporate clients as well. And it was very industry agnostic in the approach on how that began to develop my approach and mindset on that whole aspect. Now, to get to the reason why I even got my real estate license, well, I came out of a transaction where even when I left corporate and I began working with a sports agent and a business management firm, I actually was called into another industry that was completely different than what I was actually doing with those guys and those organizations. But I wanted to get back into like doing something transactional. And that was kind of like part of my why. But I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it at the time. I was managing a barbershop in downtown in Buckhead. I was, I'm a master barber too, if you don't know I already. So, but I was facilitating stuff with people that were coming in the shop because you had, again, diverse clientele. I had guys that were coming in that were doing like different things in life. You had marketing executives, you had, doctors, you had lawyers. They were just, it was like the clientele base was so diversified that I was able to reach and touch and talk to people that operated in different capacities, in different industries. So I had a friend of mine that suggested like, they asked me how I was going to get paid from facilitating these types of deals from behind the chair. And coming out of a transaction world where I get either a percentage of a deal or percentage of a gross deal or something of that nature, I'm thinking the same thing. Like, it's going to probably be the same formula. And someone suggested, like, you may need to try to solidify yourself a little bit more so that you bring a little more credibility to the table. And they said, it sounds like you're trying to do business brokerage. And I was like, that sounds interesting. And they had clients that were actual business brokers, and they were able to, facilitate the introduction where we were able to have a conversation about business brokerage. And, it was two young ladies. They were talking to me about what business brokerage was and buying and selling the business and working with business owners and entrepreneurs, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, wow, this is exactly what I want to be doing. Like, because when I was a business manager, I was recruiting athletes that were in the process of transitioning from college to the league. So a lot of that stuff, I wanted to be able to bring certain things to the table for these guys as they were looking for like opportunities to invest outside of just the, stock market. They were looking for investment opportunities, tangible opportunities as well. And so when she was like, they were telling me I needed to, get my real estate license to do business brokerage, that was my next step. That was the next phase for me to go get the real estate license. Now, the part about that was, it was such a logistical challenge once I got my license to go and hang my license to go work with them per se, because I had a massive clientele coming through the shop, and that was paying bills at the time. So it was truly challenging to just say, how can I pick up this career, move over to another career that is 100% commission, that, I had to create a complete new pipeline of clientele. So the small world thing that happened was a guy that was coming in the shop, and he was an actual broker. And, he got wind that I was getting my license. And so he approached me one day and was like, hey, I hear you getting your license. If you pass your exam, you can just come hang with me. And so the benefit to him was he was right up the street from the shop. So I was able to kind of, hang my license with him. If I needed to go to the shop, needed to do meetings, I can walk up the street. If I had clients that were coming to the shop, I can walk back to the shop. I can deal with them. But
Can he get a free haircut too?
No, ain't no free haircut going on. Ain't no free haircuts popping out. Not at all. That was a good try though. That was a good try. Yeah. But the downside, I think, to that opportunity was, although I was active and I was learning more about just the real estate industry as a whole, mm-hmm. I wasn't learning anything about what I ultimately wanted to do, which was the actual business brokerage part. And once I got wind about doing business brokerage, that's when the commercial real estate aspect introduced itself to me as well. So along that path, I just kind of went from brokerage to brokerage, trying to find like that niche on how can I find that right individual that can, take me under the wing, which is go to my next point, Joel. You got to find mentorship.
Okay. All right.
And that was the part of that plan. At the time, I had opened up my first shop, but I also had a position with a sports performance facility out in Swanee that I was going to. And so I'm working with the sports agents, working with the athletes. It's kind of like, it would seem like it was all over the place, but for me, it was kind of like it was almost one lane for me. So I know somebody out on the outside looking in, they're like, man, you got a lot going on. But for me, it was like, it's just kind of one hand washing the other as far as I was concerned. And so I ended up showing a home to one of the sports agents who was looking to relocate to Atlanta. And the actual agent who had the home listed, she got wind that I was around these pro athletes and these guys preparing to be pros. So she was obviously trying to create a longer term relationship, because it may have been some future business for her somewhere down the road. You just never know. It's part of the networking process. But she asked me a question. And she was like, well, what is it that you really want to do in real estate? And I was like, I really want to get into commercial, but I'm having a hard time trying to find somebody to help me get in that lane. And so she had a friend, she worked with Keller Williams at the time. And so she had a mentor who was a commercial agent. And that's all she did was commercial real estate. She facilitated a meeting with the young lady and myself. And she actually said, hey, I'll mentor you. If you move your license over to Keller Williams, I'll mentor you and start showing you some ropes on the commercial real estate side. So that was the first move for me to really begin working with someone who was intentional about helping me begin to understand the industry and grow like some knowledge on the commercial side. Again, Keller Williams was still primarily a residential firm. And so a lot of the training, a lot of the classes that were offered, a lot of the information, it was geared towards residential real estate. So although I had a mentor, I still wasn't with a firm that was quote unquote fully a commercial firm, fully providing us with the tools to go out and build a commercial portfolio of business. So it just took a lot of time for me to really understand like how I needed to kind of move forward. And the good thing about doing transactions and doing leasing and stuff like that, I had clients that I was working with, and that's how I actually ended up working for the first company that was a full commercial real estate firm, because I co-brokered the deal with the young lady. She was a full-time commercial broker. And she asked me like, again, one day, well, if you want to do commercial, why don't you come and work with us? We'll still let you if you need to do some residential deal, we may still be able to let you do that. And so I ended up moving my license to that company until they decided that they wanted to do straight Class A real estate. And I had to make a choice again as to what I want to do, because I was still behind the chair. I wanted to be very general. I didn't want to like constrict into one level of a discipline. So the long short of it is I went back to a residential firm, but I had more commercial knowledge at this point in time. So that's how I kind of began to really get into my feet wet, because I was able to find certain mentors and certain people who were able to kind of pull me in and kind of give me a little game here and there about what I need to do. And if we were working transactions, they'll be available for me if I needed to call on them in that kind of capacity.
Okay, all right. So it's it's an interesting subject and an interesting path, because one thing that we always struggle with in business is you look at people that might be on the top of the mountain, if you will, and it looks like they had a straight trajectory to get there. And that one day they just woke up and they did X, Y, Z, and then all of a sudden they were extremely successful. One thing that you're helping us to appreciate here is that it's not always like that. If you're on the ground and you're trying to pay your bills on a daily basis, but at the same time you're trying to advance yourself and move to that next level, and it's not always that simple. It's not always a straight linear path.
Exactly.
You get setbacks, and you go to this company, and that doesn't work out, and you go to this other company, and you kind of bounce around. So what it looks like, despite all of that, you still have been moving forward in your goals and your aspirations from that standpoint, which is good. I do want to do this at this point and start opening up the line to folks that may have questions, or if you have something you want to put in the chat, you can do that, or raise your hand and we'll try to get to you and start answering those. But in the meantime, what else do you have there on your list that you wanted to make sure that we cover, before we start taking those additional questions? Because you mentioned mentorship. I think that's extremely important. That's part of what REAP does and these other organizations is try to provide that mentorship.
Right.
You got to have that. What other things do you think is important that a person needs to know as they try to make those transitions?
Well, I mean, you mentioned REAP, and I think REAP is obviously an important segue for me because REAP is what really like the class. When I enrolled in, I saw an ad on Facebook or somewhere before I applied to REAP in 2016, and my class was the first class back from the 2012 class. They had a 4-year gap before, and so we were like the first class to come back. And to be honest, like just the information and knowledge from REAP was like just so on point as far as helping you find a direction. Because I think like the most important thing is, once you find the why, you can define past experiences what direction do I go from there? So, it was in REAP, and I don't remember what week T. Dallas taught the class, but he ended up teaching the class and he based the class around the book that he has, 32 Steps of Tenant Rep. And so as he was like describing like what he did as a tenant rep broker and talked about some of those processes and those steps, I was like, man, that's what I've been doing. Right. Like the whole like, so I never knew like what the title was, what the how to frame it in the and to say, okay, this is what I'm doing. And all in all, before I was just, okay, I want to do commercial. Like I was just want to do commercial real estate, want to do commercial real estate. But so REIT was very important to really helping identify what that lane would look like for myself moving forward. And I think that was important because it really I think it shortened the curve from just kind of throwing spitballs up against the wall, hoping they stick, hoping you find opportunity, hoping you find a mentor that can, even with finding the mentor, you still kind of need to know somewhat what you want to do. So it's some research that you would need to do on your part so that, as you approach it, you can find a mentor that's doing what you're doing at the end of the day, what you desire to do moving forward. So I think, so REIT was a game changer for me. Once I finished with REIT, I interviewed with a couple of companies that, because my plan at that point in time was I had the year prior to that was the year I got my broker's license. So at that point I knew I can create. And, as an entrepreneur, and creating brands before, I knew if all this fails, if no one hired me and no one decided to bring me onto their team to help grow their organization, I knew at the end of the day I can create one. And that was my fallback. And as a broker, I could create as many entities as I desired to do. And so once I created Rushmore after interviewing with a couple of companies that didn't, want to bring me on, I already knew that the lane was going to be tenant rep and business brokerage, and because I knew that it was a lane that could bridge a gap between clients looking for location, site selection from office retail to clients that were looking for existing businesses. To me, they're all entrepreneurs. To how we frame it, we work with entrepreneurs. Like we like to position ourselves with entrepreneurs and we can meet them on any end of the spectrum. We've had examples of clients who they wanted to open up a store from the ground up. And we talked about a strategy, and part of that strategy kicked in was, how about we look at something that's already cash flowing and turnkey? Mm-hmm. And that became a different strategy. So as I was evaluating how other companies were operating, only I think one or two of them even really had like that dynamic as, tenant rep and business brokerage in it. And some of them, they were bigger than me, obviously. So they actually encompassed more than just tenant rep. They were pretty much full service. So they did, landlord rep, they did tenant rep, they did management, they did business brokerage. Whereas I wanted to really refine it and do more tenant rep business brokerage. So identifying the right broker to work with, the right brokerage to work with that's doing what you have a desire to do, I think is important. But getting that information, getting that knowledge to understand what it is that you might want to do is also important. You talk about the class. So the class was actually a byproduct because I had a young lady who was very interested in, becoming a real estate agent. And, initially she thought she was going to have to do residential at first. And so I broke it down like, no, you just got to get with the broker that's doing what you want to do, because ultimately she wanted to do commercial. So she was actually applying to go into class to get a license, but I was trying to get her in the REIT program, but she missed one of the qualifications that would allow her into the program. And so I'm sitting back like, well, she on fire and she ready to really go. So how do I create an opportunity where she can still get into this industry? Because none of us are in my opinion, gatekeepers. Why are we keeping people out of the industry because they may not have this or may not have that, when you can coach them and train them at the end of the day, and they have work ethic, they have perseverance, they have all the other tangible things that they need to be successful. They just need that path to get down. So that was the way. That's how I created the class. I ended up creating the class because I was going to train her off the curriculum of the class, because I wanted to bring on the team and get her up to speed. And so I created the Principles of Commercial Real Estate class. And I just wanted to talk within the class about just, basics, 101 commercial real estate roles and representation, so that, it gives individuals who are looking to either make a transition from residential real estate into the commercial real estate space just an idea of who the players are, how you may be able to fit into that gambit of playing in the game based off of your past experiences, or, a clear vision of where it is that you desire to go moving forward. So I was appreciative that, for me, it was cool that they didn't let her in, because it gave us the opportunity to now create something that, that can be a different alternative to help other individuals that may not be able to get into all the programs that can expose them to all aspects of commercial real estate. And it's been pan out. I mean, so the class is now certified as a C class with 2 real estate schools. We've been, putting on classes now. We had over almost 600 registered for one of my classes about 3 weeks ago, and about 265 showed up for that class. That was an awesome experience moving forward. So I'm appreciative of having that opportunity to create that type of that platform, so that we can do our part in making this industry as diverse as it needs to be.
Gotcha. So what exactly is the Live Gigantic Real Estate School? Is that
Live Gigantic?
Yeah. I'm sorry, Live Gigantic.
Yeah,
that's Live Live.
Yeah, Eric Keys offers some real estate classes. He also offers he does a great classes on firearm protection for real estate agents. Being able to protect yourself in the marketplace from scrupulous clients. Showing properties and things of that nature. So he's had this school. He's been really pumping out quality content as far as the classes are concerned. So Eric and we met. I think we probably met about 3-4 years ago. We met before the pandemic, and we actually kind of stayed in touch. And he called me one day, and I said, "Man, I got this class I'm putting together. It's for agents. It's for residential agents that's interested in commercial industry. It's like a one-on-one commercial class." And he's like, "Man, I got to get this class. I've been wanting to do a commercial class." And so we just made it happen, and it's been going well from there.
Okay, all right, sounds good. So any other tidbits that we've left out, haven't covered yet, as regards inspiring and encouraging other ones to get into the space?
I guess before we get to questions, and I would say as you begin, if making a transition is something that is definitely on your mind, as you evaluate your past experience, evaluate your mindset, begin to speak as though you're already in the industry. Speak as though you already own it. Speak as though you're already there. And I know sometimes that's challenging, because you may not have like certain lingo to know what to say, but you have to mentally project yourself as already being there, because you got to think like, our path, and I'm pretty sure most of us who have tried to make a transition or got our real estate license, similar to myself, it was something that we were doing in transitioning from another career. The difference in most cases in how you see agents come into like the commercial space versus coming into the residential space is they come straight out of college going into commercial. Like, so they catch them when they're young. They young. They put them on these programs to get them trained up. It was funny. I was showing the office space the other day, a couple weeks ago in Buckhead, and so I was just having a small talk with the agent. She worked with a bigger firm, and so I asked her like, well, how did you end up working with this company? And she's like, well, I interned with them, and they didn't even have a position for me after I interned, but I just loved it so much, and so she basically telling me that they created a position for her. And I was thinking to myself, man, that got to be nice that they just created a position for you. So like, but I'm saying like, man, like why aren't we in certain positions for those positions to be created for us at the end of the day? And for me, it was just a stark distinction as far as like the path coming into the commercial space, straight out of college, how they recruit commercial brokers from the start versus a residential agent that's looking to make a transition into the commercial space. It's finding the tools to get exposure, and the training can be daunting, but you just got to stay at it and get involved with organizations that are doing something with what you're doing. So with all that, just, I would say build your network, leverage with a lot of the other residential agents that you may know if you're looking to make a transition, because you're going to have to focus at the end of the day. You're going to have to put the time and focus in, and it will be challenging working with a broker and you're trying to still go show houses and you're trying to get them to train you on commercial. Like that's probably number one reason why they don't hire residential agents at major firms, because that learning curve, like they won't have the tools for you to go show houses. And if you kind of like, I got to go show a house, it's gonna be a pull teeth on their end. So yeah.
Okay, all right. Very interesting. Appreciate you sharing that. Let's Theta had a question here. What methods do you use to prepare new inner city small business owners for leasing or purchasing commercial real estate? So, what method do you use to prepare ones in that regard?
Oh, that's a good question. So that's really it's really case by case because all entrepreneurs are rarely in the same place at the same time as far as their process is concerned. So one of the things we do is just like I like to start asking questions. I ask them, what are they why? What's your why? Why do you think you're ready to go into a space? Like
Mhm.
what's precluding you for want to make a decision into taking on a lease at this point in time? And evaluating their opportunities, evaluating where they want to go. Here's the thing, later you got to understand. Like once they start talking about they want a space and they want a space in a certain location, they want a space to be a certain size, they want a space they want their budget. Their budget is fit to cost a certain amount. Like you done narrowed down so many opportunities just by that. In them three sentences, you can narrow down. You can narrow down. When I say narrow down, meaning like you restrict your opportunities as far as spaces to place them in because they're not. You have to understand, like strip plazas, strip malls, or whatever aspect of real estate you're actually putting them and taking them into. Like there is limited spaces, and so if you're a mom and pop startup, you're still competing with national brands. So one of the things that I like to do is try to make sure that they are prepared from a brand identity perspective. Like, how do we make sure that if I present your idea, your concept to a landlord rep, how do you stand out? Or do you stand out? Or am I just calling them, telling them your idea? Hey, I got a company, they want to do this. And the landlord rep over there scratching their head, like, well, who is this company? Like, what are they like? Who are we talking about? And getting people to kind of open up about what they're doing. Sometimes it's challenging, but once you, from a tenant rep side, our thing is to help them understand we working on your behalf. We basically are working for you to get you in position to attain the space. And we're talking about a lease side. Actually, the acquisition side is, a little different monster, Joel, from a financing capacity, like that takes a lot of other level of preparation, tenure in business, previous financials, credit score, or business score, a business credit score. If you've been in business long enough to take out a loan with your business, the acquisition aspect is more qualification, and to have good people on your team to refer individuals over to, like good financial capital people who raise capital, or commercial lenders would be a good opportunity to spread that out, because you don't have to have all the answers to everything they're trying to do. Definitely allow other people on your team or in your sphere that specialize in certain things to make you look better by sending them to them and allowing them to work that process through and through.
Okay, all right, sounds good. And she had another question here as well. Any suggestions on getting economic development corporations to respond in this virtual environment? They aren't in the office and aren't responding. So, any thoughts to how to skin that cat?
I know I go to a lot of events. I see a lot of economic development people there. So you may just have to evaluate the sphere you in, where you're hanging out. If they ain't in the office, they somewhere. So you gotta, I guess, find the appropriate networking events that will put you in position with those people that you're looking to get in touch with. That's what I would say. You got to network. You got to network. You can't never stop networking, because with social media, with technology, it's no longer 6 degrees of separation. It's more like a half a degree of separation at this point. So you network and meet the right person. I mean, I'm on this show because at this point in time, because of half of someone that I've known for a while. It was the networking. If she and I hadn't known each other, I probably wouldn't be sitting here right now. Joe, I was gonna be on here eventually, though, Joe.
So,
not right now. I'm preempting.
All right, man. I hear you. I hear you. Well, hey, I mean that, but you bring up a point that network gets tighter. Obviously we know the network that we're talking about. We'll leave that right there for now. But even Terrence, I've known Terrence for years. And I've known his partner even longer, right? And so for them to get together, and then for me and him to get together a few weeks ago, and now you get together with him, and I mean it's all kind of how it all ties together. And then we know that there's not a whole lot of minorities in this space anyway. So at some point we're going to run across each other.
Exactly.
And do that. Yeah. So networking is a big part of it. We hope COVID cooperates a little bit and goes away, but nevertheless, we just got to work around it and kind of go from there. So good point. Appreciate that. And Theda, we appreciate your questions there, and she responded with great advice. So I guess that answers the question. So that was very good from that standpoint. If there's any other questions, you guys let me know or raise your hand or put it in the chat box. We'll get to that as well. So in the meantime, while we're waiting on that coming in, James, you took us down a path today that was kind of like this. How did you get to where you are today? And it was up, down, it was cutting hair, it was selling vacuum cleaners, it was doing all this stuff. But I'm very happy to have you on because you're homegrown. You're not a transplanted talent. You're homegrown right here, and you're doing your thing in your own neighborhood. I'm even trying to do stuff in my own neighborhood, because there's something about that, right?
Right.
Trying to do stuff in your own community. And actually, the stuff that we're doing in New Orleans came about because I was helping somebody in their old neighborhood, which is why I even got down with it because I knew they knew the neighborhood.
Right.
So that's what it's all about. But one question I always ask myself, and I could even have a book about this, and it's a 5-year planner. Where do you want to be in 5 years? What does it look like? What does your life look like in 5 years? And I always go back to the question of what do you want to be when you grow up? Are you doing those things that you wanted to do when you were a kid and you had the whole world in front of you? Money was no object. The sky was the limit. You had youth, you had energy, you had good health, you had all that. Where would you be and where did you envision yourself? So if I was to ask you, where are you trying to take Rushmore as a company? Where do you want to be when you grow? What do you want your company? What do you want your company to look like as a grown business, as an adult, mature, business from that standpoint? And obviously, that's not insulting because, like I said, I ask myself the same question every day.
Right.
So where do you want to be when you grow up with your business and everything else at this point?
So, when I first started, I obviously kind of just took a mindset to, build your own table at the end of the day. And, when you do that, you can create opportunities for other individuals to, operate in their greatness as well as you synergize and grow together and moving forward. So over time, and that takes time. It takes time to find the right personnel, right people, right partner in situations, right people to help you grow. I've been taking my time, to be honest with you. Before I even began bringing on agents, I want to just focus on, learning the industry, myself, learning what I want to do so that I can, relatively work on perfecting the craft. But I just think 5-10 years from now, we're gonna be we premiere right now, and we on the verge of going even further, and we premiere because it's the mindset. Like it ain't got nothing to do with how many transactions you did, anything of that nature. It's what do you believe about yourself? Or what do you believe about your company? What do you believe about your firm? And I say we premiere and improving. We trying to get better every day. Just onboarded. We onboarding about 3 new brokers. I got probably 2 more about to come on. I know over 85% of the new businesses that are created and opening up are women-owned businesses. And so with this industry definitely growing and increasing in inclusion and diversity at the same time, I'm definitely looking to, not only bring qualified individuals to the table, but individuals who are coachable, individuals who are ready to elevate their situation through this industry, and those who understand that it's a patience game, and it takes time. We've already kind of really solidified certain agreements. Like we had a broker partnership agreement with Tenant Base that cuts a lot of our growth in half, because we're getting qualified leads through Tenant Base right now. That is allowing us to really work the market where these are warm calls. These are prospects that are ready to go, ready to be in spaces, versus our own clients, our own prospects that we have to cultivate in certain ways. Going back to Theda's question, when there are people who may call me, they may know us, they may know me, they need a little more development as far as getting their presentations together. When now you got an opportunity to work with clients, national clients already that have, through just relationship and partnership. So being smaller, being a boutique allows us opportunity to be flexible in our approach. I get, calls from other companies who are looking to do certain different levels of type of partnership agreements and deals with us. And, it's been just a great, transition and movement. So So same thing took somebody, 20 years to do. It might not take us but 5 years to do. I don't know. I'm just pushing right now. I often say like I try not to even plan as much. I was working my plan when I got called into barbering. Like I was doing what I really desired to do at the time, and that was working with athletes in a business management firm. I had other agents, clients I was working with too. And it took a complete shift. And I knew it was a divine shift at the end of the day, but the divine shift is what put me here. I often tell people, like, if I probably didn't answer that call to turn that barbershop, I probably wouldn't have got my real estate license because it wasn't even on my radar of something to do at the end of the day. But it was because I was in that position, in that situation, and I began like still operating in what I was, which is a facilitator. Someone made a suggestion to me and it kind of steered my path into going to get the license. And that was what, put us in position to kind of be at this place right now, to just really grow a brand and grow a company and grow a team. My orcas, I call them. We some killer whales out here. We hunting.
Okay, all right. Well, keep hunting, man.
Right.
Very, very encouraging from that standpoint. And one thing I must say is you definitely have a do not give up mentality. Just keep going, keep pushing, keep the endurance, mentorship, networking. All those are very, very fine principles and things to keep in mind as you continue to advance your career. So we certainly appreciate that. We thank you so much for being here today. Do you have any final comments for our audience as regards anything else you want to share with us?
I would just say if you're looking to make a transition, education is very important, but educate yourself while you're doing it. Go to class, in the class junkie. Don't be a seminar junkie. You got to get out here and do it. The knowledge is in the mistakes at the end of the day. They can't sue you but for so much. So don't worry about it. Go out here and do it. Just keep pushing, and educate yourself while you're doing it at the end of the day. Now that's I'll leave you with that.
Yeah. That's actually interesting. There was a TV show where they were mentoring some younger ones, and there was a guy and he had like multiple degrees and had this and had that, and they were like, "Well, dude, when are you gonna get to work, man? I mean, all you're doing is sitting in the classroom. You're racking up these degrees, which is good, but at some point you gotta put that to work.
You gotta put it to work. You gotta get to work.
You can't just sit there in a classroom all day."
Right.
So, very fine point. It's all about putting in the work at the end of the day. And I like that tagline. The training is. Well, how did you say it? The education is in the mistakes. I think that's
the knowledge is in the mistakes.
The knowledge is in the mistakes. So I'm gonna keep that in mind because if you don't get out there and try, you won't score 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So you got to get out there and make it happen. So certainly appreciate that, James. It's been a pleasure having you today. And for all of you here in attendance, this has been the Mornings with Joel CRE podcast. We thank you so much for being here as well. And James, thank you again. And
thank you.
We look forward to seeing you guys next week on another episode of the podcast. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. You've been listening to Mornings with Joel, Commercial Real Estate Podcast, where we focus on rising stars and established players in commercial real estate and talk to them about how they are building legacies in today's marketplace. Please check back weekly to hear our upcoming guests.